Hey guys, welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk movies. Happy October/Halloween month, everyone. I'm here to make good on my promise to make rapid-fire style videos on horror movies that I will be seeing all throughout the month. Let's get started with this week's first batch of films. Number 1. Beetlejuice. I kind of needed to start with this one because, well, fun fact, I've never seen the whole thing. Yeah. But question, do I at least get to live long enough to talk about the movie if I admit that I saw the cartoon as a kid?
It's showtime!
To be more accurate, it's more like I haven't seen the whole thing. I've seen bits and pieces over the decades, but never in one sitting. And I know, if I don't watch this, my coworker's gonna kill me. And fun fact of the day, I like my head on my shoulders. I know, I'm so weird. And you also know you're in a bad spot in movie watching when your own parents, who are over 60, give you a weird look for not having seen it. So, here we be. Adam and Barbara were once a happy couple enjoying their lives, but meet an untimely death, yet continue to roam their house, unable to go anywhere else. However, it's not long before their home is occupied by new homeowners, a married couple and their teenage daughter, Lydia. Not content with letting someone else live in their home, Adam and Barbara try to scare them away, but are unsuccessful. With little choice, they're enticed by a peculiar poltergeist named Beetlejuice, who promises to get rid of them in his own way. I have no idea how in hell I went 31 years without seeing this movie in its entirety. This movie is such a twisted delight. Tim Burton may have lost his touch over the last decade, so it's such a wonderful reminder that once upon a time, he was a master of oddball creativity. This was sheer perfection in so many ways. From the twisted and gothic sets, the incredible makeup and practical effects, even the stop-motion stuff all worked brilliantly. It's basically a darker, more disturbing precursor to The Mask, a live-action cartoon that surprisingly works wonders and hasn't been topped. The acting is top-notch, with Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara standing out, and, of course, Michael Keaton stealing the show. By God, what a performance! But this does bring me to a couple of complaints. I know, hang me. But let me get this out before I'm lynched. I kinda wanted more of Beetlejuice. If you really pay attention, he's not in the movie much, nor is he really the primary villain. I would argue the parents hold that distinction. They're the ones that want to enslave Adam and Barbara for their personal ends. Also, I wonder why this movie bothered with having drama and serious moments. The beginning made sense, but once Adam and Barbara die, the film clearly wants the wacky afterlife and insane visuals to be the star of the movie. It is, but the story wastes time on Barbara developing a liking for Lydia, which comes out of nowhere, and Lydia is suicidal for reasons. I don't know, I feel like it should have either developed the relationships more to justify the dramatic beats, or do away with them entirely and just go full-on Wonderland with this. Get the fuck out of here, no one wants you! Still, gotta say, if you've never seen this, you're missing out on a truly one-of-a-kind horror comedy. At least now my coworker doesn't have to plot my death anymore. My honest rating for Beetlejuice, a 4 out of 5. Number 2. The Orphanage. I couldn't tell you how many times I've tried to sit down and watch this. Every time I do, something takes me away. What is it? I don't fucking know. But it's always been on my radar, mostly because, well, it's got Guillermo del Toro's personal seal of approval, so it's gotta be good, right? Laura, her husband, and adopted son Simon, who has an active imagination of talking to invisible friends, have taken up residence in the orphanage she grew up in as a child herself and plan to convert it to a home for disabled children. However, on the day of their grand opening, Simon disappears, and a months-long struggle to find him continues, all the while being haunted by the invisible friends that Simon was previously talking to and her husband not believing her. This movie was so close to being legitimately great. I'm serious. If it had played its cards right, this would have been up there with The Exorcist, The Shining, Psycho, and up there with my favorite horror flicks like The Conjuring and the others. But frustratingly, it falls painfully short. The cliches. Oh my god. The conga line of tropes that only bad horror movies have. I can't decide if I want to scream with rage or cry with depression. This movie has every cliche you can think of. Scary doors opening and closing by themselves. Ninja trucks that kill people. A loved one who thinks the protagonist is crazy. Goes to a school teacher who introduces the protagonist to a medium who brings fancy hardware to see the ghosts. A skeptic who thinks it's all a sham. That same loved one wanting to get out of the house, confessing emotions to the loved one that the protagonist thinks is in bed, but turns out is really a ghost. It's all there. It's all fucking there, and I was clawing at my own face. Normally, I wouldn't be so passionately angry, but that's the thing. Everything outside of these cliches is absolutely amazing. The acting from Belen Rueda is fantastic. The way they delicately explore the themes of guilt and grief. And even though the flick is largely not all that scary, I admit the final act of the film is truly unsettling, and where I was at the height of my investment. And that ending, oh my god, that ending is perfect. I won't dare give anything away, but this ending, if the film's first two acts weren't completely greased with cliches, I would have cried. I would have found the second horror film that would have made me cry. I wanted to cry, but so much about this frustrated me that it diluted the emotions I wanted to feel. It's received pretty positive reviews, and I can definitely see why. But for my taste, it was almost perfect, but its imperfections crippled it immensely. My honest rating for The Orphanage, a heartbreaking strong 3 out of 5. Number 3. Jacob's Ladder. Not much to say about how I fell into this one. I knew about the remake, found out that it was a remake, had to check out what the original was, saw that it starred Tim Robbins from my favorite film, The Shawshank Redemption. I was sold. I needed to see this. Jake Singer is a Vietnam War veteran. Though he has seemingly moved on to a mild-mannered life, he has been experiencing increasingly more disturbing hallucinations and flashbacks to his final days in Vietnam after being ambushed by the enemy, which begins to sour his relationship with his girlfriend Jessie, and is only more determined to figure out what's wrong with him when he learns that his former squad mates have also experienced the same things he has. By God, this movie deserves its own video. Yet again, this comes so close to being utterly amazing, but I think this time it's more my fault, as I'm probably doing the one thing that I shouldn't do when watching this, taking it literal. But let's start with the positives. Tim Robbins, as he usually does, knocks it out of the park. He truly was the quintessential everyman back in the 90s, and it works absolutely perfectly for him. His portrayal of a former soldier suffering from PTSD feels so real. His rising fear, his desperation to hang on to reality, only to see it slowly crumbling as the story progresses, his mild-mannered charm during the more peaceful times, his performance is perfectly haunting and endearing. Props to the directing as well, as the PTSD doesn't feel like it's being portrayed like typical Hollywood, in that none of the flashback scenes look like they induce headaches, which I'm pretty sure isn't how memory recollection works. While the movie isn't necessarily scary, the atmosphere definitely leaves you unsettled, and enough of the insane imagery is enough to send a chill down your spine, mostly for how great they look for 1990. I'm not the least bit surprised this flick would go on to inspire an entire video game franchise, at least in part. But as for the negatives, I was really starting to hate Jessie. This woman is so mean-spirited that I have to wonder why she bothers to be with Jake at all. She never seems to empathize with Jake until his very life is on the line, making a whole lot of choices that both confused and angered me. As for everything else, it's so hard to talk about without giving away important information. The best I can say is, it truly plays with your expectations. Even if you have some things figured out, you won't have everything figured out. But even when all the pieces come together, I'm left reflecting on the rest of the story, and I sure do have a few questions. Maybe that's not the point though. Maybe the movie does add up and I'm not giving it the proper thought it deserves. Either way, while I might need to sit on it longer to let it sink in, there's no denying that it's a fascinating and compelling watch. I say if you haven't seen it, check it out. My honest rating for Jacob's Ladder, a 4 out of 5. Number 4. The Witches. Never seen it. All I know is that it's getting a remake, the internet collectively lost its shit, I'm in a witch movie kind of mood, so here I am. After losing his parents in a tragic car accident, young Luke now lives with his grandmother, who warns him of the witches of the world who hate children. After a health scare, Luke and Grandma visit a hotel for some much-needed relaxation, when Luke discovers that the hotel is almost completely inhabited by witches, and even their dreaded leader, the Grand High Witch herself, who plans to turn every child in England into a mouse. Having been captured by them and turned into a mouse himself, it's up to Luke to try and save the day. Alright, yeah, I really enjoyed myself on this one. First off, how did I not know this was a Jim Henson production? Holy crap does it show, and I gotta say, this type of filmmaking hasn't lost its charm and impact. As per usual with a Henson film, the makeup is spot on. The witches look enjoyably gross. The puppetry is fun and hideously creative. By God, the transformations in this movie can be downright terrifying. Back when a PG rating made sense. Go 1990! But if there's anyone that steals the show and has an absolute gas in her role, is the living legend herself, Angelica Houston. By God, she brings such passion to the creepy roles she's given. I'd fight anyone who'd argue with me that this is one of her most delicious performances, right up there with Morticia Addams. She looks like she loves playing this villain, eating the scenery like it's a Thanksgiving banquet. Even though her witch makeup is grotesque, I couldn't look away because she's beautifully in the moment and utterly captivates you. Her intimidation, passive aggression, snobbiness, underlying sexiness, I could gush for days. Yeah, the little kid does alright. His voice can grate a little from time to time, but that's an obvious nitpick. In fact, most of my issues with the flick are nitpicks. Like, why does Grandma try to tell the parents that their son was also turned into a mouse, when it's obvious that they wouldn't believe her? Not exactly a world that knows witches exist. Speaking of these same parents, why do they understand him in one scene, but not the other? And likely my biggest issue, which again is fairly small, if the Grand Witch and Grandma used to be old adversaries, why isn't there more interactions between the two characters? I would have loved to see a rivalry between them play out more. Them having a past that's not truly addressed feels like it's ultimately unnecessary to the story. But overall, this was a delightful watch. I'd be careful about showing your kids this, especially if they're not great with scary movies, but it's perfectly fine if you feel like challenging them. My honest rating for The Witches, a strong 4 out of 5. Number 5. Arachnophobia. I promise I'll have more variety in these intros, but not much of an intro to this. All I know is that it's a classic, people love it, it scares my mom, I recognize some amazing talent in it. Had to check it out. A new species of spider from South America, deadly, toxic, and highly aggressive, has made its way to a small town and begins to breed and produce offspring that terrorize the town. Meanwhile, the new doctor in town, Ross Jennings, has been trying to cope but soon finds himself questioning how the numerous townsfolk have suddenly died from unknown causes. Yeah, okay, I had some fun with this one too. Some. It's basically a routine B-movie that I've seen far too many times in my life. This one is simply done better. The moment things start rolling, you can guess every story beat that's gonna happen. You can easily predict who's gonna die, what role they serve in the meantime, and if you're really savvy, exactly when those moments will happen. Of course, no one believes the main character when he says the situation is worse than others think it is, but eventually come around when shit starts affecting them directly in the third act. It's pretty by the numbers in that regard. Basically, if you've seen Jaws, think that, but with spiders. With all that said, very similar to Jaws, it has a few endearing elements that help it stand out. The acting is great from Jeff Daniels especially, he's just great in anything that he does, and of course, John Goodman as the quirky exterminator. Jeff Daniels and John Goodman, how the hell have they not done more movies together? I feel like that's a match made in heaven. And of course, the models used for the larger spiders. Like I said in my Witches review, this is filmmaking I wish I could see more of. You know, if this movie was made today, it would be all CGI. Oh, they already did something like that. And that was pretty fun too. Still, for what could be done in the 90s, this was pretty respectable. Not all that scary unless you truly have arachnophobia, in which case get a paper bag on standby, but for everyone else, it's not a bad time. I don't think I'd ever watch it again, but it's worth it at least once. My honest rating for Arachnophobia, a strong 3 out of 5. Number 6. The Rage, CARRIE 2. To say that the original CARRIE is a horror classic is probably a monumental understatement. Though I would argue that people just remember the climactic ending. I mean, it really does just sort of haphazardly slap the ending on all the box art, all the posters, so people know how this movie's gonna end before they even see it. Marketing for this is just doomed to fail, I swear to God. But as iconic does in the tail-eating snake that is Hollywood today, follow-ups of all shapes and sizes tend to get churned out, and CARRIE has not been an exception. There was a 2002 TV remake that was supposed to spark a TV show that ultimately never got off the ground, mostly because it wasn't well received. And of course, there was the 2013 theatrical release starring Chloe Grace Moretz. I think with all that going on, the original CARRIE remains the homecoming queen. While I would love to review all of those remakes, I'm opting for the 1999 direct sequel, The Rage, CARRIE 2. Truth be told, I have seen this before, and I remember liking it despite its negative reception. Granted, that was a long time ago, but I want to see if it still holds up. Rachel Lang is your typical high school teenager, but things get hard for her when her best friend commits suicide. Knowing it was because she slept with one of the heartless jocks, breaking her heart after losing her virginity to him, the jocks begin a vengeful campaign against Rachel to prevent her from talking to the police, all the while struggling to keep her telekinetic abilities under control. I don't get it. Honestly, I might like this movie a lot more than CARRIE. I know, blasphemy, not the first time I've pissed off people with my taste in movies, but really consider my words here. Compare Rachel to Carrie White. Carrie is not a very fleshed out character, and isn't even much of a character. Yes, she lives with a hyper-religious mother who abused Carrie, and that's why she's quiet and keeps to herself, but that's all you can say about her. She's nice and she's quiet. Rachel, on the other hand, is, yes, moody. Considering her tragic backstory, I'm not surprised. She's snarky, witty, but has her lighter moments. Not so dark that she can't smile, she's just a more fleshed out character. And sure, the whole point of the original flick is the religious overtones, making us question if Carrie's abilities truly are the work of the devil or not, but symbolism and allegories ring hollow to me if it's not a message or theme being carried out by a relatable or interesting character. With Rachel, I do relate to her and find her interesting. Her mother was crazy, her best friend committed suicide, she's wrestling with supernatural powers she's trying to ignore, lives with overly strict foster parents. It's not hard to empathize with her, especially considering that she's supposed to be this social outcast, near-goth type, but she doesn't have that standard attitude that one would see in another flick. Emily Burgle really finds the heart and soul that a character like Rachel needs, that I don't think Sissy Spacek truly hit in the same way. Rachel's relationship to Jesse is endearing and adorable. adorable, the right amount of sweet and awkward. It's a lot of fun to watch. Also, I love how that tattoo spreads around her when she gets angry. Make no mistake, the flick isn't perfect. You have your stereotypical high school where the cast looks like they're pushing 30, jocks are one-dimensional horny assholes, popular girls are one-dimensional vain and overly obsessed with popularity, and yeah, it's predictable in the sense that you know how the ending is gonna go, and I wish that tattoo was a little more prominent when she got angry. And there's a strong argument that without the religious overtones, subbing that with the standard high school drama with the occasional superpower making an appearance, you wouldn't even guess this was a sequel to Carrie until the very end. So this was never going to be a legitimately great film. But I think it gets a bad rap, and is far better than most would say. My honest rating for The Rage Carrie 2, a 4 out of 5. And last but not least, number 7, DEATHWATch. Back in high school, I had a good buddy who was a war history buff. I think everyone knew at least one. And one of his favorite pastimes was showing us his favorite war films. You name it, he's probably seen it, and he probably likes it in some way, shape, or form. Wind Talkers, We Were Soldiers, Taeguki. That is actually my favorite war film, by the way, so thank you. And funny enough, Andy Serkis was in it. That piqued my interest. I love Lord of the Rings, man. Now, I can't remember if I've seen the whole thing, or if I just simply don't remember it, but I decided to revisit it with my current taste in films to see how it holds up. Set in 1917 World War I, young Private Charlie Shakespeare and his company of men survive a brutal attack by the German forces. Separated from the rest of their group, Charlie and a small group of survivors stumble upon an abandoned German trench and decide to hold it. However, the longer they stay, they soon realize that something is very wrong, as they find bodies of German soldiers that seemed like they were fighting each other, and the small group of soldiers slowly turns on each other as one by one, they are killed off by an unknown enemy. I so badly wanted to like this movie, but upon revisiting it, it's a pretty mixed bag. Before I get into the review itself, seriously, MJ Bassett made this? As in, Rogue MJ Bassett? I swear to God, I did not plan this out! Anyway, let's hit the positives. I love the premise. War horror films are pretty rare to come by, and I don't count themes of horrors of war. I'm talking about actual war films framed as horror flicks. The acting is very good from everyone. Jamie Bell's character growth from a coward to a bona fide hero is done very well. And of course, Andy fucking Serkis as the psycho nutjob who likes to kill people absolutely steals the show. Worth it for him alone, especially if you're a fan like me. And I do enjoy how it keeps you guessing. I don't believe in the slightest that anyone can predict how this will end. However, that pretty much leads to the film's greatest faults. How it ends is confusing. I'm not giving away anything, but the movie is trying to toe the line of being a psychological horror and or supernatural. And by the end of it, I have no idea what it is. Even when things come to a head, nothing is truly made clear. As a result of not knowing the reality within the story, the entire experience feels hollow. And there wouldn't have been a wrong answer to lean in any one direction. The psychological aspects are well done, the supernatural aspects are brutally satisfying. I think it was also playing at a slasher horror. Any one of these choices would have worked perfectly, yet because it tries to do so many things, it ultimately fails at all of them. Which is a shame because there are great ideas here. Is it worth watching? Yeah, I suppose. It's an intriguing watch, and like I said, if you want unpredictable horror flick, here it is. But a word of caution, it ends pretty muddied. My honest rating for DEATHWATch, a 3 out of 5. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy out there. Please wear a mask if you go out. Hope to see you soon.